I'm not arguing, and Mark wouldn't argue either, that we're anywhere close to the promised land for early childhood. I am telling you that we are making significant progress. Which brings me to what the centerpiece of today is, which is hearing from Mike Fernandez, who is a fellow citizen of Miami, and in my lifetime among the most giving, caring, generous people I know. In any conventional terms, he is also one of the most successful people I know. Buyer, builder, seller of 25 companies, all but 2 of them significantly successful. The most recent example was a company he bought fewer than 5 years ago for $23 million and sold it recently for $900 million. Yeah, I hear the chamber members saying, yeah. But I would argue that he is successful in even more important ways, and that they all build from the basic human values that not only work best in life, but also in business. You have a copy of Mike's book. It is told in his wonderfully evocative voice, told through the prism of a 508-mile journey across the top of northern Spain, a pilgrimage that goes back to 900 A.D. And in the course of Mike's first trip, he raised more than $1 million in pledges so that other children would have the opportunity to have the life-saving care that Mike's first grandchild had a few years back when she was 2. And now she is 5 with every prospect of a full and successful life. Each of you has a copy of the book, Humbled by the Journey, Life Lessons for My Family and Yours. And you need to know that when the book was contemplated, it was planned to have a print run of maybe 500 copies, some of which would be sold and some of which would be given away. And you are now the possessor of a book that has been purchased for a total of 20,000 copies to this point. It's a remarkable human story. It is a great American story in my estimation. So you're going to have the book to read and enjoy, and I don't want to eat into our precious time together by doing some standard bio. Instead, you will get a full flavor of the man responding to questions that I will pose. Mike, come on up here. Mike, you decided that you didn't want to write the book. Truly didn't want to write the book. Was sort of talked into it. First by his wife, who had been after him for 10 years to write this book. And ultimately, he says to me, I'll write the book if you shepherd it. And I have a 10-foot-tall shepherd staff in my office as a consequence that I did not buy myself. And I got some other people to help. Marty Mercer is in the audience today, an extraordinary journalist, was a big help. Thank you, Marty. Had a wonderful designer, had to find a publisher, but somebody had to tell the story, and the story had to be told by Mike. And Mike decides, with no prompting or hinting from me, that he would devote the proceeds, not the profits, the proceeds. Now, Alan Bench, you're in business, aren't you? Don't I remember that? You know the difference between proceeds and profits, and you'd rather have proceeds, wouldn't you? Absolutely. So Mike decided that he would devote these dollars to helping build a movement for early learning. And what's important about this subject to you, Mike? You're a business person. You talk about return on investment.
Well, I am a product of that investment. I feel like somewhat, but by the way, every time I speak, they give me a mic with a Cuban accent. This is not right. maybe we can switch.
Yeah, how did I get an Anglo accent and you
no
got a
idea.
Cuban one?
I don't know. So somewhat of an underachiever in the sense that I love my country, and my country is not 90 miles south where we just are trying to cut a deal with. My country is this country. I came to this country as an adopted son in 1965, left Cuba in 1964, Christmas Eve 1964. And from the perspective of education, I don't have a large, formal, advanced studies education. Actually, I dropped out of after one semester in college. So what I have accomplished, what I have done, has been by the values that have been taught to me at home, by teachers, by family, values that are core to all of us, values of respect, hard work, sacrifice, values of loving your country and giving back. And it is those values that actually have gotten me to be here with all of you who are much greater achievers than I am and make a difference every day, not only from the smallest little baby, but to the tall athletes that play at a university, Alan, and even the University of Miami from time to time.
So, Mike, you've got some strong thoughts about the changing nature of our country. And while things may be changing the most in Miami, they are changing everywhere in Florida and in America. And at one point you write in the book, quote, embrace them and their children and they trust them like they're going to be the future of America because they are going to be the future. Talk about what you see happening and what's the opportunity, including in business.
So I happen to have a tremendous amount of respect for Jewish people that I have met throughout my life ever since I came to this country. In particular, they were very, very helpful, probably because there used to be immigrants at one point. They had a rough time getting from one land to the other. The diaspora of the Jewish people is not unique to them, but they have been unique in the sense that in my life they have been very helpful, provided the first job for my father when he came to this country. A man became my first investor in my first job out of the Army, happened to be a man of Jewish faith. The second man of Jewish faith was also my second investor in another deal. So I have a tremendous amount of respect for that. So I was asked to attend a meeting of Jewish dignitaries. I was the only non-Israeli, non-Jew in the room. And one of them asked me, I don't understand how you have been able to build all of these companies as fast as you do. So the last company that we built, as David mentioned, was from basically an insolvent company that had $30 million in revenues to where we sold it, I guess, Speaker Benz in February. It was a $1.4 billion business a year, and we got a nice little premium for it. And I said to this individual, I said, imagine if you were the first Israeli to move to Australia, and you knew there were 17 or 50 million more coming to Australia. That's the target that I have in my businesses. That is the population that I hit. We are today living in a country where 1/4 of every child in a playground has a Hispanic surname. A country that has more Hispanics than there are Canadians in Canada. A country that if you measure the economy that those Hispanics have, it's the 7th largest economy in the world. And it's not unique to Hispanics because if you look at the 40% of the Fortune 500 companies, they are run either by immigrants or sons or daughters of immigrants. So there's a certain mindset, and these people are not lazy the same way as I'm not lazy. Early on, I was cleaning animal cages in the hospital while I was going through high school. And on weekends, I worked at the American Museum of Natural History. But I was taught values at home that allow me to save and also give back. That population is changing. So if you have a business today, it may be less in northern Florida, but it is something that you can get ahead of the curve, the same way as I have. Bring those people in. They're highly entrepreneurial. Imagine yourself leaving Gatson County or Madison County and going to Brazil, not speaking the language, and you're 35 years old and you have 2 children and a wife. You left all the comfort you know at home. You don't know anybody there. They're risk takers. They're risk takers that are going to get ahead. And the way that I see them is like the cowboy and the Indian movies I used to see from the 1950s and 60s, where the cowboys have their back against Monument Valley, and there's 3,000 Indians coming at them, and they have no choice but to fight. None of these people are going to go back. They will fight. They will get ahead. They will play, and they will be tomorrow's Germans, Irish, Italians, Israelis, Dutch. They will be. And the more and the faster you bring into your organizations in senior positions, the more you will learn how that population thinks. You'll be able to tap in an incredible resource.
Mike, you mentioned earlier you were not the student most starring in school. And you come here, you're 12, your family is literally forced out of Cuba, you, your sister, your mother, your father. Your father starts all over again. Did not come from a wealthy background of any sort, little town in southeastern Cuba. And you come here, and Xavier High in New York, which is a very famous Jesuit school, Justice Scalia went to that school as one example. And they offer you and one other person a minority scholarship. And boy, you're excited about going to the school, so you come home and see your dad. What's he do?
So this is a really waspy school. All of the parents have white hair and blue eyes. The accent again, this thing is not working right. And here there's 2 guys that are different. There's a guy who's African American, his name is Al Roker. And there's me. So we're both given this opportunity for all the evil things you guys have done to us over the last 300 years. And I go home and I tell my dad that I got a scholarship. And just like it was yesterday, I can see my dad across the little table. We lived in a small little apartment. It was like $78 a month. And the tuition in the school was $167 a month. And he's about to put a fork in his mouth, and I said, I got a scholarship. And he says, he puts it down. He goes, because of your grades. And he's going to go back up. And I said, no, because I'm Hispanic. And he puts the fork down. He says, how does that work? So I tell him that this other guy and I got it and the reasons why. And instead of being happy, he was angry that I would even think about it. And he tells me to stand up. So I stand up. And he says, you're not missing any arms or any legs. You get a job, you pay half of the tuition, I pay the other half. So I appreciate my high school education as much as somebody could appreciate their law degree, their PhD, or their MD. I paid for it. And this is a country where you can do anything. You know, we talk about people, we read in the press. I'm not sure the press is always right, but I'm not sure in this one. So we read in the press that...
Even I don't argue that.
Thank you. Marty? So that Americans are viewed as self-centered, with an act of superiority. The reality is I haven't been to a country where people do not want to come to America. I've been hunting in Africa, and they will tell you that how much they would want to come to America. We live in the best country in the world, that the only thing that they give you is an equal opportunity to do whatever you want to do, and you can fall as many times as you fall, and they will allow you to get back up again. This is a great country. I was speaking at the University of Michigan, not as good as Florida State, but I was speaking there on this issue, and a student asked me, he says, how did you deal with a minority issue? How did you overcome the discrimination that you faced? And I said, I chose to ignore it. I had options. I could have felt oppressed by it, or could have felt challenged by it. And I felt challenged by it. I wanted to prove to that guy that he was wrong. This is a great country. As long as you fall, you can get up again. No matter what you achieve in this country, look at the difference. I could have been the same type of financial success as I was here in England, but there's certain country clubs in England I could not be allowed to participate in. Here, as long as my balance is okay at the bank, they will take me in, even in Thomasville.
Mike, you had a Jesuit priest who was the head of school named Father Domenico, and you were, I think you'd underscore it, never a really good student in an academic way. And every afternoon something happened when you went to school, and I want you to embed in this the story of going to the New York Symphony, and what did you learn there?
So within a month or so of being in this elite school, I stood out as a sore thumb. I felt, gosh, I'm just one. I don't relate to a lot of these guys. They go to proms, cotillion. I don't know what a cotillion is. I don't know what a prom is. My English is even worse than it is today. So I started getting in trouble. And the career advancement director talks to me and tells me that I have a below average IQ. I should consider being a policeman or a fireman because I need a lot of direction in my life. And I should think about changing schools because this one obviously is just too demanding for my abilities. The principal, Father Vincent Domenico, next to my father, is probably the most influential person in my life, put a chair in his office and made me go to his office every single day from 3 to 5. But he never talked to me about math, science, chemistry, Latin, French. He talked to me about values. He talked to me about giving back. He talked to me about how good I was going to feel the day that I gave back something and made somebody's life better than mine. He was the most influential person that I've had in my life other than my parents. When I was in this school, I knew that I came from a poor neighborhood. I was born in a small town above a bottle storage warehouse where a man on a horse would go around town and pick up used dirty bottles, take them there, wash them, and then sell them to the bottling company back. My father was a sandwich maker, a very proud, very bright. We were not wealthy, but we were extremely rich when it came to values and principles and drive. And I knew my background was not going to allow me to climb through socially the communities that I wanted somehow to be part of in the future. So there was this teacher named Mr. Maroney. He was not a priest. He was a lay teacher. And he had tickets. He taught drama. And he had tickets to the New York Philharmonic every week. And I spoke at the 2005 graduating class at this school that always takes place at St. Patrick's Cathedral on Fifth Avenue in New York City. And I see this old man, and he comes to me, and he said, "You were the only kid in the 32 years I taught at that school that would ask me for tickets to the Philharmonic. You had an appreciation for classical music from a very early age." And I went on to speak. And after I spoke at the graduation, I found my way back to Mr. Maroney. I said, "Look, I owe you an explanation. Because I didn't go there because I liked classical music. I went there because I grew up in an area where there were people shooting up heroin in the stairway. Friends of my family spoke like most Cubans do, with their hands and loud. They crossed their legs differently than the wealthier people did. So I went there really to learn how to hold a cigarette, how to sit down, how to speak without moving my hands too much. So to me, it was part of my education. So someday I could be part of that group that drove the processes. He actually was interviewed in an article years later, and he actually talks about this experience and his encounter with me on this issue. So life is full of opportunities. We see them every day. But we choose either not to look for them, and then when we see them, most of us take no action. Most of us walk away. This man and my heritage, my parents, this teacher, they told me, unless you take action, it's worthless. You got to take action, whatever it is. So I didn't follow the advice that I should have been a policeman or a fireman. I stayed in school. I actually graduated early from school, 6 months. I went to the University of New Mexico in Albuquerque. And the reason that I dropped out was I was drafted into the Army. And I chose to volunteer instead and do an extra year because I wanted to overcome a fear that I had. And if you were drafted, they told you what to do. If you volunteer, you could choose what to do. My fear was I was terrified of heights. So I became a paratrooper.
Makes sense. And Mike, you did 47 jumps. You get paid, I thought, something like $285 a month and another $25 for jumping. That's one payment a month of $25. And it wasn't always a splendiferous moment. You, at one point, are jumping from 1,250 feet. Your main parachute doesn't open. Finally opens the reserve at 300. You end up with smashed ankles. But I have heard you talk many times about you've learned almost nothing from success. And most of what you know is from failing. Talk about that.
So a lot of people like to succeed. I find that I learn very little from success. I learn a lot from failing. I've hammered nails 2x4 100 times. I don't remember every time that I swung the hammer. But the one time that I missed it and hit my thumb, I will tell you exactly where the nail was, what speed the travel my hammer was going at, what angle it was at. So you learn from mistakes. By the way, I didn't jump a few times at 1,250 feet. Every jump was at 1,250 feet, which is the combat jump that they let you out at. So when I land, I break both ankles. And at 19, it's a blessing to be able to recognize that, my God, I'm terminal. If that reserve parachute did not open, I would have been dead. So at a very early age, I learned that I was not going to live forever. And that allowed me to do something which, when I got out of the Army, I put into place at work. I never had a 1-year plan. I never had a 3-year plan, as they teach you in school, because I was never in school to learn those classes. I had a 7-day plan. I've always had 7 days, and it was always Monday to Monday. And I always fell short. I never hit my plan. But I was able to accomplish more in 7 days than most people can do in a month. I fell short, and if I had succeeded, I would have said, I didn't push myself hard enough. Learning from failure is the best thing that have ever happened to me. I remember it. It humbles you, by the way. Just these people walk around with their kind of head kind of big because they think that their stuff doesn't stink. It's just, help out the other guy. Failure is a great thing to do, and if you're not pushing yourself hard enough, then you're not failing. And I surround myself with failures like me, by the way.
You have a favorite day of the week?
Sunday. I get to play on Monday. Just like I used to be a kid on Friday, I used to get play on Saturdays or Sundays.
So I've always personally hated the term workaholic because it's pejorative.
What does that mean for most of us? I'm just kidding, Dennis.
In which language?
Okay. Can't get one on him.
You love to work. I heard you with Magic Johnson at one point talking. Both of you agreed you not only love to work, but you're a control freak.
I've never met anyone, honestly, who has not achieved a certain level of success, whether it was at piano playing or it was at running a university, that was not compulsive in their behavior. I've never been able to balance my life. I have 2 failed marriages to prove it. Yet, I was still a good dad because although I failed at 2 marriages, both of those sets of kids chose to live with me after the divorce. And I've been married now for 16 years to someone who understands business. She actually met her when I was selling a company. And Alan, Adam, you know her well. Jack, you know Constance. And she's a Michigander, University of Michigan business graduate. She knows how I think. She gives me my space. And she knows that when I get home, I don't want to relive my day. She doesn't say, so how was your day, honey? She doesn't ask. When I want to bring it up, I'll bring it up. She's very supportive of what I do, and we have a great time together. Actually, I'm going, which we were trying to figure out what to do for the summer, and last week I said, you know what, I'm going to go on another walk on El Camino on May 18th. And Constance, you want to join me for the last week with Christopher, who's 11? And she said, yeah, I'm in. So being balanced doesn't, in my opinion, which is a high school graduate, does not help you excel at most things. Many people can balance their life. God bless them. Most people that I know, from Magic Johnson to Richard Branson to Andy Garcia, Martin Sheen, David Lawrence. Do you live a balanced life, David?
No, I have 5 children too, though.
So we had time to have fun, too.
I think we're very blessed.
Yes.
So, Mike, you were helping children long before you had any money. One of the things I'd tell you about Mike, in the spirit of somebody many of you have heard, Maimonides, who was a 13th century Jewish rabbi, philosopher, thinker, was he talked about the various stages of charity, the highest of which nobody knows who gave the money, etc. But you were helping children long before you had any money. And I think of the little girl, I think in Rio de Janeiro, terribly burned. Tell folks that story.
So I was 22. I got out of the Army when I was 22. And I read in the paper that there was an article written, not about this girl in particular. The article was about how people in the slums of Rio tap into electricity and gas lines in order to light their stove and turn on a light bulb. And because of that practice, there is a great frequency of fires in these favelas, which are slums. And they talked about this particular girl whose legs were burned when she was literally a few months old, and she lost them. She were cut off from right above the knee down. So I was 22. I was making $500 a month as an insurance salesman in Miami, and I wanted to see if I could help. So I think all of that, the experience of hearing it at home and what Father Dominuco used to tell me about giving back to others, through the consulate for Brazil, I found this little girl, found her parents, arranged to fly them to Miami, found the family who had an apartment from Michigan in Miami, and they only used it in the summer, so they loaned me the apartment for this family for the winter. Miami Children's Hospital supplied, free of charge, the training, and I bought the orthotics for the girl. And it didn't cost her a penny. I was making $500 a month. I never met her. I did not want to meet her. And that was probably the first deed where it was kind of, you don't have to be rich to give back. Sometimes it's a smile, sometimes it's a pat in the back, sometimes it's just your attitude when somebody goes by. You have no idea what they're going through. And just to be nice to them, it's a great gift. So that was the first time that I actually did something.
So in the spirit of ending at 1:30, and Tony Carvajal is going to be up here for 3 or 4 minutes, right, Tony? Please join me in thanking a great American example, Mike Fernandez.